Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, as always, Nelson, today on this Monday morning, afternoon, pardon me. And there was a lot to talk about in terms of basketball over the weekend. I spent some time last week talking about March Madness, and now we're going to focus our shift back towards the NBA because, again, a lot happened this week. So, in our first segment, as you could see, we have LeBron James. He recently just reached 40K in terms of all-time scoring in the regular season. He now has 40,000 plus points in the regular season, so I'm going to briefly talk about that, as well as the game that they played with the Denver Nuggets. I'm going to touch up on that. And in the second segment, we are going to talk about the Boston Celtics and their recent win against the Golden State Warriors. And in the third segment, we're going to give a quick recap of all of the games that happened from this previous weekend. Well, all the important games that happened this previous weekend, because there were a lot of games that happened this weekend, as you guys probably know. And we also have a special fourth segment, as always, so stay in tune for the third segment to figure out exactly what that is. And before I begin with this first segment, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please use the link in the description below to get your comments recognized, and it'll go right up at the top of my screen. The link is GSMCPodcast.net. It's displayed below the ticker as well as in the link in the description. And that's all you got to do now. It's a lot easier this time, given how it's a much smaller link. So with that out of the way, let's go right ahead and go into everyone's favorite topic of conversation, which is LeBron James. It seems like everything on the media is LeBron. Some people love it, like me. Some people can't stand it, like a bunch of my friends and a bunch of my sweet mates. They cannot stand the fact that LeBron is constantly being on the media and constantly being everywhere. But being the oldest player in the NBA and still being as good as he is really something that a lot of people take for granted just because his name is LeBron James. So, as I said previously, LeBron, he recently reached the 40,000 points mark for the regular season. He is the only player in NBA history to ever reach that point, 40,000 points. Now, being the only player in the NBA to ever do that is absolutely insane, especially when you take into consideration how a lot of people don't really consider LeBron a scorer. Like, it's crazy to think about how scoring might not even be the best aspect of LeBron's game. A lot of people point at LeBron's IQ or his passing as being a key aspect to his game and one of the best aspect of his game. And it's the fact that LeBron is capable of doing both on the court at any given point in time that really makes him stand out. Because again, usually you'd expect just pure scorers to reach this phenomenon and to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in points. Like, for example, Kareem, Karl Malone, can't stand using his name, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, all of these guys that are in the top 10 in scoring are known specifically for their scoring. But LeBron is different. He's known for doing everything else on the basketball court. And as of right now, there's really I don't think there's any more of an argument for LeBron not being the GOAT. There's zero argument whatsoever. He literally has a triple-double when looking at total stats. 40K points, 10K plus rebounds, and 10K plus assists. That is absolutely insane when you just think of just the overall grasp of LeBron's career and his legacy. It's absolutely ridiculous just what he can do on the basketball court. And it's come to the point now where it's if you think Michael Jordan's the GOAT, you just have a bias towards Michael Jordan. I really, genuinely do not see a single argument for Michael Jordan being the greatest basketball player of all time anymore. And, like, it doesn't make any sense to me why people are just so reluctant to even put LeBron in, like, in a top two or a top three scenario, and they still have all of these, like, players over him. It doesn't make any sense to me, because LeBron is literally the greatest all around player that this league has ever seen. There is absolutely no part of his game that needs improvement. The only real part of his game that, like, I think everyone, even LeBron fans, can agree with is lacking is his free throw percentage. Like, his free throw shooting over, like, the span of his career, it's not necessarily the greatest. Like, it is good. I mean, 73, but, like, averaging around, like, 70% from, like, the free throw line as an elite player like he is, it's not really, like, it's not really something that's to be expected. Usually, like, the elite scorers and, like, the best of the best players, they always have a very high free throw. Like Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan, and Kevin Durant, and Stephen Curry, they all have a very high free throw. And well, apart from, like, centers who, like, they aren't really known for their free throws. Kareem and, like, Shaq, all of those players aren't really known for their free throws. But given how good LeBron is, and given how his play style is more like a guard, with the fact that he holds the ball and, like, he controls the offense most of the time, it's not really expected for someone like that to really struggle from the free throw line. But that's literally the only part of his game that I think anyone can agree that, like, needs work, or, like, not even needs work, that isn't, like, elite, I guess you could say, because everything else he can do at an elite level. He can rebound the ball, he can play make, he can score, he can shoot, he can drive to the basket. He has everything that you could ever ask for in an NBA player, and it really I just don't understand what the logic is and what the bias is anymore towards Michael Jordan. Like, the ring debate, I think, is by far the dumbest debate in all of sports. I can't stand the ring debate whatsoever, because not only does the ring debate not take into account any context, but it also completely diminishes the rest of the players that were on the roster. Like, when you talk about Jordan, you say, oh, 6 rings, and, like, even in every other sport, you talk about, I'll bring up football, for example. You talk about Tom Brady, you always bring up the rings. You talk about Jordan, you always bring up the rings. And it's like, I understand that those players are are contributed a main factor and a big winning factor into, like, getting all those championships. Like, they wouldn't have won the championships without any of them, like, whether it be Tom, whether it be Michael Jordan. But at the same time, they also wouldn't have won championships without their players on the team. Like, since we're talking basketball, we'll talk Michael Jordan, saying, like, if we just say that Michael Jordan has the 6 rings, like, as if he was the only player on the team. Like, what about Scottie Pippen? What about Dennis Rodman? What about Horace Grant? What about Paxton? What about Steve Kerr? What about all of these other players on the roster that impacted the game in some way, shape, or form, that allowed the team to be great? Like, where's the respect for them? Like, if anything, the argument shouldn't be on rings, it should be on finals MVPs, because that just shows that you were the best player on the winning team. And, like, you were the reason, like, being the best player on the winning team means that you were a very important and contributing factor to winning that championship. And I feel like using the finals MVP argument as well also just doesn't take into account context. And when you're talking about sports, context is absolutely everything. I mentioned football previously. Like, you want to talk about Tom's 7 rings. I mean, we only talk about that, but the context behind it, about how, like, you know, the Pats were a ridiculous team on the defense, they were a great team offensively, and they had all of these other pieces that also contributed into winning Super Bowls. Same thing with basketball. as I mentioned previously, like all these other players that have contributing factors that impact the game in some way, shape, or form, they get completely left in the dust when bringing up the ring debate. And it's unfair, and it doesn't take into account any of the context behind those finals matchups. Like, for example, I'll bring up LeBron since we are talking about LeBron. Whenever everyone looks at his finals record, they think, he's a loser. Like, he's a finals loser. He's not my GOAT because he's lost so many finals. And that is a very dumb argument because, one, you had to make the finals all of those times in order to even be in a position to lose those finals. And that's another thing that gets completely stuffed under the rug. LeBron making it to the finals 8 straight years, a feat that hasn't been done by any NBA player, and he's done that consecutively for 8 straight years. Like, obviously he didn't win all the time, but his teammates and his teams, they weren't really good enough to compete against the opponents, or they would underperform when the lights shine the brightest. Like, for example, and sometimes in LeBron's case, the team is just ridiculously stacked. So, for example, when he lost his first finals on his stint with Cleveland, LeBron didn't really play that well, but this was his first finals appearance. And if you want to be really difficult on LeBron, then you would definitely be difficult on his first finals appearance. But me personally, being in the finals for the first time, that's a lot of pressure, especially considering how he was the best player on that team and the offense literally revolved around him and how well he performed. It was unfair because that's a lot of pressure to put on an extremely young basketball player at that age. And going on into 2011, that's literally the only series where LeBron legitimately messed up. Yes, as I mentioned in the somebody in the comments, Austin Angulum, I don't know, forgive me if I botched your last name, said 2011 Mavs was bad. Yes, that is the only loss, the only finals loss in LeBron's career where it was legitimately his fault. And people still bring up that finals to this day because that's literally the only argument that they could have for LeBron because he played bad in that one series. And while yes, it's inexcusable. I'm not even gonna make an excuse for LeBron playing bad in that series. Absolutely inexcusable the way he played. However, later on in his career, when he continued to make the finals over and over and over again, we've seen that improvement in all sorts of moments, whether it's clutchness, whether it's they need a basket, overall stats, efficiency, all of that, it's all gone up, and it's done nothing but improve going further down the road in LeBron's career. And the context behind it, that I was just mentioning, is that the teams that he's had to play in order to have a chance of winning the finals were ridiculously stacked. So 2014, LeBron James had to go up against the San Antonio Spurs, where they had Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Kawhi Leonard. All 4 of those players had the opportunity to win the finals MVP. And when you put all 4 of those players, it's just way too much firepower for one player to handle. And people might say, oh, he had teammates like Wade and Bosh, but they weren't playing well in that series. They completely they got scared in that series. They were not playing well. The numbers that they were averaging were far lower than the numbers that they were averaging in previous seasons. Austin also has another thing to say in the chat. 3-1 versus the Warriors was the best performance ever. And there's even an argument for that not even being the best performance. I think 2018 LeBron is by far the best playoff LeBron that I've ever seen, in my personal opinion. But obviously he got swept in the finals, unfortunately. But again, going back into the context, the Golden State Warriors, they won 73 games. And then they picked up Kevin Durant, who was the second best small forward, only behind LeBron James. That team, when you just think about it, 73 wins,
and then adding the second best small forward in the league, that's unbeatable. Combining that with the two greatest shooters, with two of the top 5 greatest shooters in NBA history, allowing Kevin Durant to operate the way he needs to, because you can't leave those guys open. It's unfair. Like, and there was absolutely no pressure on Golden State. Like, they had the finals in the bag. They had it every single year in the bag. And the only reason why they didn't three-peat was because Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson got hurt. Like, we all know that the Raptors in 2019, they only won because Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson got hurt. And that is the context that doesn't get talked about when you talk about LeBron and his finals record. And it's completely unfair, because I don't know how you expect anyone to beat that Golden State Warriors team with how the Cleveland Cavaliers were playing in that final series. The only player that really showed up for LeBron James was Kyrie Irving. And I'm sorry, but while Kyrie Irving is a phenomenal basketball player, just LeBron and Kyrie Irving aren't enough to outscore Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant. That's just not enough. Not to mention Andre Iguodala coming off of the bench, who was a Finals MVP in 2015. Or Sean Livingston, who I've never seen him miss a single mid-range when he was on Golden State. When you take all of that into consideration, it makes total sense how LeBron couldn't get a good Finals record. And if Kevin Durant did not make that move, chances are LeBron would be sitting on a lot more championships than what he is right now. And it's the context that is not taken into account when talking about LeBron. And it just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. But with that, we are out of time for the first segment. So now we are going to go into the second segment, where I talk about the Boston Celtics getting their revenge on Golden State by blowing them out. And blowing them out, saying that they got blown out is honestly very generous. And I can't say what I want to say live on stream, because it's against the rules and regulations, but they really did them dirty this game. So stay tuned for that after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in the second segment, we are going to talk a little bit about the Boston Celtics and how their recent game going up against Golden State. And obviously, they matched up against each other in the finals a few years ago. So I'm just going to talk about that as well. But before I begin and really talk about this segment, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker to get your comments recognized. The link is GSMCPodcast.net. Helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. And the link is in the description, and it is displayed below the ticker on every show segment. And remember to donate, because it really helps the show. So with that out of the way, let's go right ahead and break into the second segment, where I go ahead and talk about the Celtics completely destroying the Warriors. Destroying They took this game incredibly personal. Like, I guarantee you, the Celtics, they had this game sketched on their calendar, marked with triple X's. Anything that could give them motivation, they had it this game. Because, obviously, like, the city of Boston, they really do not like Golden State. They don't like Ayesha Curry. They don't like Steph Curry because they lost to them in the finals in 2022, I believe. And it was obviously like it wasn't a bad loss in the finals, but Tatum did not play as well as he was expected of him, at least according to the media. I actually think he played relatively decent, given how it was his first finals appearance. Like, a lot of people are really difficult on Tatum because he's a Kobe fan, and Kobe did not play well in his first final series. He won, but he didn't play well in it. That was mainly Shaq. That is the 2000 was the 1 year where, and I'm a Kobe fan, where Shaq legitimately carried Kobe in his championship run. Like, Kobe did not play well. He shot very inefficiently. He didn't even average 20 points. But Jason Tatum, on the other hand, he did average 22 points. So they were very, very harsh on Tatum simply because he's a Kobe fan and he's like really looking up to Kobe. And they're like, Kobe wouldn't stand for that. Well, Kobe did not play well in his first finals series. And obviously, like, even though, like, he didn't play well, like, the team was still very bitter about losing to the Golden State Warriors. And, like, who wouldn't be bitter? And they took this game ridiculously personal. Like, I was shocked at how the Celtics played the Warriors in this game. It was the largest halftime lead in Boston Celtics history. And it really shows the problem with this Golden State team. Like, it really didn't seem like they were taking the Boston Celtics seriously for some reason, because the Celtics are the best team in the NBA right now. How can you not take them seriously? This was also the largest loss of Stephen Curry's career, which honestly says a lot, and it really goes to show you, like, the amount of help that Steph Curry has had in his career playing with all these stars. But I digress. And, like, again, another fun fact, the Boston Celtics, they actually own 3 games. With this game, they now have 3 games in the top 5 for the biggest margin of victory. So I'll give you an example. Oklahoma City versus Portland, that was the biggest margin of victory in terms of points, by 62. And then Philadelphia going up against Charlotte, that was the second largest with 53. The Boston Celtics own the next 3 games with 52, 51, and 50-point blowouts respectively in this league. Now, these Celtics are ridiculously dominant. They are insane this year. And part of that is, like, with the all-star starting lineup that they have. Like, obviously the starting lineup isn't full of all-stars, but they are full of either former all-stars or really, really good players. I mean, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, like, obviously those are, like, the main 2 of that team, and, like, the 2 best players of the team. They're that 1-2 punch. But now you also have Drew Holiday, who, if you don't remember his time on the Pelicans or his time with the Bucks, Drew Holiday already won a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks. Not to mention the fact that he is a great defender at the point guard and also relatively decent on the offensive side of the ball as well. And being surrounded by, like, players like Tatum and Jaylen Brown who can help create shots for you, he's not asked to really do much as he was asked to do on the Bucks. So this is a great situation for him and a great scenario for him. Derek White, he's turning into a star. There was a stretch where he was averaging 20 points per game, and we already know how good of a defender Derek White is. So that's another thing that really strikes me with the Boston Celtics. They have a very strong starting lineup, and they're dominant on both the offense and the defensive side of the ball, which makes them the best team in the Eastern Conference by far, because their defense is elite and their offense is also elite. Not to mention Kristaps also being in the starting lineup as well, given his length and how tall he is, and the fact that he could shoot the ball. Like, it just gives the Boston Celtics so much more options than any other team in this league. And one thing I want to talk about is the Warriors' game plan going into this game. Now, Draymond Green, I'm just going to pull up the quote real quick. He said that they implemented their defensive strategy 15 minutes before they left the locker room. Now, I put implement and defensive strategy in air quotes because their strategy was to not play defense on Jaylen Brown. I know it sounds completely crazy, like out of their mind, completely crazy, to just leave Jaylen Brown open, but that was the game plan going into this game. And I'm like, what? Your game plan going into this game was to leave Jaylen Brown open? Like, I understand, sure, Jaylen Brown, like, he might not have a left hand, but that doesn't mean he can't shoot the ball. Like, what? He shoots 50% from the field and 36% from three. That is not someone to leave open. Like, and he torched them. Literally to open the gate out. He completely torched them. Like, what did they think? They think he wasn't going to shoot the open three? If you watch that game, you guys should have seen that game. If you watch that game, it was like practice shots for Jaylen Brown. That's how wide open they were. They were giving him Westbrook and Ben Simmons treatment. And you do not do that to someone who a 36% three-point shooter and a 50% shooter from the field. You don't do that. And it boggles my mind to think that was the defensive strategy that Steve Kerr came up with going into this game. Leave Jaylen Brown open. Like, are you serious? The second best player on the team, you're going to leave open from three? Are you kidding me? I genuinely, I have no explanation for this defensive strategy. Zero explanation whatsoever. Because Jaylen can shoot, and it's like, what, did you not remember? And like, it's odd because Jaylen Brown, like, he played very well in the finals series against Golden State, and that's the impression that they picked up from Jaylen Brown, that he couldn't shoot and that, like, he was scared to shoot. Like, what? And it was a very disappointing game for the Golden State Warriors. And while the defense on Jaylen Brown was terrible, the defense on Stephen Curry was smothering. They refused to leave that man open, and they refused to give him a good shot. I believe he started like 0 for 10 in the first half going into this game. And obviously, when you're Steph Curry and you are a shooter like that, that is not ideal. That is just not an ideal position that you want to put your team in. Like, and the defense on him was that great, and it's like, the fact that they're putting much more effort on the defensive end than the Golden State Warriors are, it's like, where is your head at? It really shows, like, who took this game seriously. And Jaylen Brown actually, like, he had a funny quote after this game. He was like, a lot of people should implement this defensive strategy because, obviously, like, he wanted to get more open shots. I think that was the most open shots that Jaylen Brown has had in this entire season. And again, like, I have no explanation for why they just left him open like he was Ben Simmons or Russell Westbrook. Like, I genuinely don't know. And like, again, like, going off of like Golden State, like, Golden State was just coming off of like a very good winning streak. Like, they were 11-3, I believe, before this game going up against the Boston Celtics. And I feel like this game, it might have brought them down to earth, but if this is the defensive strategy that they're going to implement against other teams, and if this is where their head's at, I really don't see this team making it far in the playoffs whatsoever. I do not see them making it far in the playoffs because it just doesn't make any sense. Now, given how the Boston Celtics have been this dominant for a very long time, I think that they have the best chance of making it all the way to the finals, and it's going to be very, very disappointing for them if they don't make it to the finals and if they don't win in the finals. Like, the window of opportunity for Boston could not be any bigger right now. And I really don't think that there's any team that could compete with them other than the Milwaukee Bucks, if they get their situations right with Doc Rivers. Because as a Nets fan, Giannis scares me. Like, he scares me. Every single time he goes to the basket, he scares me. And he's built sort of that. A lot of people don't really think Giannis is clutch, but I personally think he's clutch, because when he was on that finals run, he was giving them great performances and great games when it really mattered. And that's what really scares me, because he plays his best basketball when the games really matter, it seems like it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's able to somehow beat the Boston Celtics, because not to mention, like, now that he has Dame, another offensive weapon, the fact that he's so dominant in the paint, it demands a double team, like, almost every single time, which thus leaves open shooters, which allows Giannis' job to be a lot easier on the offensive side of the ball. However, the Boston Celtics and their defense is very, very good, and they're very good with rotations. This is a team that has been built from the ground up with Jason Tatum, and with drafting and all of these players signing. And it's a great fit, signing Kristaps, obviously. And with all of this in mind, the chemistry and the fact that they've all been playing with each other for so long is going to be the difference maker in a series against the Milwaukee Bucks. Because, again, they're still trying to figure it out with Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, as well as Doc Rivers. And the fact that Doc Rivers is their head coach just gives the Boston Celtics an edge by default, because Doc Rivers and his history in the playoffs is not that ideal. But with that, we're out of time for the second segment. Now we are going to go into the third segment, where I give a quick recap of all of the important games that happened last night and the rest of this weekend. So stay tuned for that after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, as you all are probably used to it by now, we're going to do a quick recap of all of the NBA games that happened this weekend, because there was a lot of them. And I'm going to see if I can fit all of the important ones in as quickly as I possibly can. But for starters, let's go ahead and bring up a game that happened yesterday that I really want to talk about, because I ended up watching this game, actually. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they matched up against the Phoenix Suns. They beat the Phoenix Suns 118-110. And I really wanted to highlight this game because Jusuf Nurkic had 31 rebounds. And he had 14 rebounds 6 minutes into the first quarter. And those 31 rebounds, despite him losing, breaks the Suns' record for most rebounds in franchise history. So now Jusuf Nurkic owns that record as a Phoenix Sun. And the last 4 players to ever get 30 boards in a game are Nurkic tonight, Kevin Love, which was all the way back in 2010, Charles Barkley, which was all the way back in 1996, and Dikembe Mutombo, which was also back in 96. So he is in elite company right now, being one of the very few players that was able to get 30 boards in a game. Now, this came at a loss, however, for the Phoenix Suns. Now, The Phoenix Suns, they did not have Devin Booker in this game because he went down the last game with an injury. We still have to know exactly what the injury is. It looks to be a minor injury, but he was taken into the locker room. And Bradley Beal, he was available for this game, though, and he definitely showed up. This was definitely the Bradley Beal that I know from Washington. He ended the game with 31 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds on 10 for 14 shooting. Super efficient from the field. They definitely needed that performance from him, but they also needed a big performance from Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant did not show up in this game, going 6 of 15 from the field. He did have 20 points, but still, 6 of 15 shooting is not ideal. Like, if he would have hit a couple more shots, they would have been a lot closer in this game than losing by 8 points. And Eric Gordon, he also shot 6 for 15 from the field for 15 points. And Jusuf Nurkic, 14 points. Grayson Allen was 3 of 9, 8 points. And this has sort of been like the problem that I've been talking about with Phoenix. And it's like, if they don't have their offense, it's similar to Indiana. If they don't have their offense, their defense is a little suspect. And going into the playoffs, when the pressure is on them to perform on the offensive side of the ball, you need something to fall back on. And the fact that they don't have the defense to fall back on hinders them in a very major sense. Now, the Thunder, they have great offensive pieces. They have an MVP caliber player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They had a Rookie of the Year candidate. Now he's not Rookie of the Year. The Rookie of the Year is 100% Victor Wembanyama. It should be unanimous at this point, but who knows? But the fact that OKC has a great team definitely helps alleviate the pressure, and the fact that they have Chet to help on the defensive end, getting a lot of blocks for the team. Even though he didn't end the game with any blocks here, so a little bit questionable given how he's super tall and lanky. But I digress. Shai Gilgeous ended the game with 35 points, 9 assists, and 8 rebounds. His game, it's very smooth to watch. Now, he's not the best of three-point shooters, but when you shoot as efficiently as he does from the field and from the mid-range, I don't really think it matters, because obviously, like, in the playoffs, it definitely will matter, however, because those mid-range shots are a lot more inefficient than regular three-point shots, because, like, that's just how it works in the NBA right now. And I understand that it's Shai, and Shai is a great mid-range shooter, but in the playoffs, when teams are going to be pinching that and definitely going to be stopping you from shooting that, it's not really ideal. And I say this, like, seeing Kevin Durant go and Kyrie go like 1 for 17 from the field in Game 2 against the Boston Celtics a while back. And obviously, like, that performance, they shot a lot of mid-ranges, and they missed all of those mid-ranges. So the same thing can happen with Shai Gilgeous and that type of shot selection. But I digress. And Jalen Williams, he ended the game with 22 points, 10 of 19 from the field, very efficient. Chet Holmgren ended the game 5 of 10, 14 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists. And everybody else on OKC, they played their part. They played their role very well in beating the Suns. And right now, I believe the Thunder, they sit up top. Yep, they are first in the Western Conference right now. Ooh, and they go up against the Lakers tonight. So we'll see if LeBron can actually nab a win going up against these guys. And I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about the Lakers game going up against Denver, and I didn't have time to talk about it in the first segment, so I'll go ahead and talk about it in this segment. But the Lakers, they ended up losing to the Denver Nuggets again. And they lost when they were unveiling Kobe's statue, and now they lost when LeBron James broke the record in points. And it seems that the Denver Nuggets are the Lakers' kryptonite. It really seems that that's what this team is. Ever since they beat them in the bubble, this team has absolutely destroyed them in both the regular season and in the playoffs. And obviously, when you have a player like Jokic, it makes sense that they get completely destroyed. But the shots that he makes are absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that they're over Anthony Davis makes it even more ridiculous, in my opinion. But LeBron James, obviously, he was the only aspect on the court that was good offensively this game. 26 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds. Roy Hachimura, he played well, 23 points, 10 for 15 from the field. But everyone else, obviously, didn't really show up. Austin Reeves, he was 7 for 12, so I guess he showed up, 19 points. Anthony Davis only took 13 shots and was 7 for 13 with 17 points. It is aggravating to watch Anthony Davis play. It does not make sense how he could go from scoring 40 points in a game to just going to scoring 17 points. It's almost as if he needs the media to bully him or people to beg him into playing well instead of just playing well. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, it's almost like he needs people to start telling him to try hard instead of just trying hard. And I don't understand why he does this. It happens every single time that I look at the box scores. He'll have 32 and 15 performance one game. Then the next game he'll go in and he'll have like 17 and 10. And then the next game after that he'll have 35 and 15 or something like that. And it's wash, rinse, repeat with him. And for someone like Anthony Davis, I'm just infuriated because he should be in the conversation right now as being one of the top 3 big men in the NBA. But instead, he's on the lower half of the top 10, which is, like, it's not bad, but it's disappointing for someone who's as good as Anthony Davis. And it just aggravates me. It really just aggravates me because it's going to be another year where LeBron doesn't have the help that he needs to go into the playoffs. And the Nuggets this game, they came prepared to hoop. Jokic ended the game with 35, 10, and 7. Jamal Murray ended the game with 24, 11, and 6. And Michael Porter Jr. ended the game with 25, 10, and 4. So the 3 important players ended with double-doubles on this team. And Michael Porter Jr. did not miss a single shot. So it makes total sense that the Lakers ended up losing this game because of how great the players on the other team are. And it's just too much firepower for the Lakers to work with, especially when not every single player is showing up. Like D'Angelo Russell, 6 for 13 from the field with only 17 points. And everyone else below that could not reach double digits. Spencer Dinwiddie, he's not lived up to any of the hype that these Lakers fans were expecting. He's just another guy that comes off of the bench at this point. He only had 3 points, was 1 of 4 from the field. He's not been playing well for the Lakers whatsoever. And again, it's incredibly infuriating because Spencer Dinwiddie is the type of player that could average 20 points per game, and he doesn't. Does not make any sense. Now, the Nuggets, I really like. A lot of people, like, obviously because there's LeBron on the team, like, they're afraid of going up against LeBron in the playoffs. I really don't think that the Nuggets have anything to worry about going up against LeBron or the Lakers in the playoffs, and I think it's going to be a sweep if they go up against them again, because given how this team played. Now, let's look at some of the other important games that ended up happening this weekend. The Boston Celtics, they played the Warriors, I mentioned earlier, but they also played the Dallas Mavericks. That was Kyrie's game where he returned to Boston, and a lot of people don't like Kyrie, obviously, because especially Boston fans, because of how he snaked them and how he legitimately snaked my franchise with the Brooklyn Nets. If you're a Boston fan or if you're a Brooklyn fan, you do not like Kyrie Irving. And the Celtics, they ended up blowing out the Mavericks in this game. Everybody played well in this game against with the Boston Celtics. And on the Mavericks side, Kyrie Irving did not play well. He only ended the game with 19 points and was 9 for 23 from the field. Not a great performance coming in from Kyrie Irving. Really not. And I don't really need to touch on that game much because I already talked a lot about the Boston Celtics in the previous segment and how dominant they are. They're definitely finals bound, assuming they don't choke yet again. But this team, it really has a lot of expectations, and they really have to live up to these expectations. Now, let's see. And any other important games that happened this weekend? The Clippers, they matched up against the Minnesota Timberwolves yesterday. And the score of this game looks like it was from 1998. The final score was 89-88. The Clippers ended up winning. And obviously, the Timberwolves, before going into this game, they were the number 1 team in the conference. And the Clippers, they're still fighting for that number 1 spot. They're stuck in the 4th right now. They're behind They're behind the Nuggets, the Wolves, and the Thunder, but they are obviously like a competing team, and they won this game with James Harden missing every single shot he took. He was 0 for 10 from the field with only 4 points, and they still won. Granted, it was by 1 point, but they still won. Kawhi ended the game with 32 points. Norman Powell ended the game with 24 points, 9 for 13. He's very underrated because he comes off the bench and he plays for the Clippers. I will say that he is an extremely underrated guard who can definitely create good looks for the Clippers and is a very vital piece to the bench. The Paul George did not show up in this game whatsoever. 5 of 16 from the field, 15 points. Terrence Mann, 2 for 3, 6 points. And really, honestly, everybody else on this team, they really didn't show up. And it was a very, very strong defensive battle in this game because, 89 to 88, that is a very low-scoring game in today's league. Now, on the Timberwolves side, Rudy Gobert played 40 minutes and only had 12 points and 16 rebounds. Anthony Edwards ended the game with 27 points. Karl Anthony Towns ended with 18, 8, and 9. So obviously, these three, they did their part, they played well. It was the rest of the team that didn't play well, and the bench was a little bit shorthanded. They only had 4 players come out of the rotation for the Timberwolves. And they all didn't really shoot that well. Anthony Edwards didn't shoot that well either, 9 for 20. Granted, that's almost 50%, but still, 3 for 10 from 3 is not ideal if you're someone like Ant. And if you're taking that many shots, you need to be hitting a lot of shots as well. Karl Anthony Towns, 7 for 18 with 18 points. Decent, but obviously, they needed more from him, and they expected more from him, given how he scored 62 points in a game at one point. You'd think that he'd provide more for the offense on this team, but I digress. Rudy Gobert, 5 of 7. And the rest of the people on the roster did not shoot that well. They really didn't. Naz Reid, 0 for 7. Mike Conley, 0 for 4. Let's see. Monte Morris, 2 for 4. Jaden McDaniels, 3 for 9. So and they shot 27% from 3. And they only hit 9 threes in this game. And it's kind of ironic because the Clippers, they ended up making 10 threes in this game and they ended up winning by 1. So that's definitely how they won the game. Obviously, this was a really low-scoring game for both sides. Definitely a game that they don't want to remember. But if we're going to talk about strictly the defensive side of the ball, I think the Clippers are in a really good spot. If they're able to hold the number 1 team to just 88 points, you're in a good spot. And another game that happened yesterday was the Knicks going up against the Cavs. And I bring this game up because Jalen Brunson ended up leaving the game 1 minute in due to a non-contact injury. His x-rays did come up negative, so we'll just have to see, and we'll just have to wait and see the sort of progress that he's making on his injury. But the Knicks, they need Brunson. They need him to stay healthy, and they need him to come into the lineup as soon as possible. And at the same time, they need Randall and OG Anunoby to come into the lineup as soon as possible. Now, despite being shorthanded with Jalen Brunson, they still won. They almost won by double digits against a Cavs team who has a better record than them and was actually getting talked about by the media as being a better team than the Knicks. And I completely disagree with the fact that the Cavs are a better team than the Knicks. They're not a better team than the New York Knicks. Because the Cavs, they lost to the Knicks last year in the postseason. And the Knicks have only gotten better. Not only that, now there's actual proof of the fact that the Knicks have gotten better, because now they didn't have Brunson, they didn't have Randall, they didn't have OG, and they still won. Dante DiVincenzo ended the game with 28 points. Josh Hart played 45 minutes in this game. He does not sit out in any of these Knicks games whatsoever. And I really don't want him to sit out in any of these Knicks games because he ended the game with 13 points, 19 rebounds, and 10 assists. That is phenomenal. That is fantastic. If you have a player like that could do the dirty work for you, that is amazing coming in from the Knicks. And like the Villanova boys, they played phenomenal in this game. And they are by far the most important aspect of the Knicks and the reason why like they're so good. And Bogdanovic, who they recently acquired in a trade, ended the game with 20 points. So he's also a great option for scoring coming off of the bench. And when you take all of these matters into account, I think the Knicks have the best chance of beating the Boston Celtics when they're healthy, because they have a great starting lineup. They have a great rotation. They have great defense when you put in OG and Josh Hart in the lineup, and they also still have like the chemistry and the offense that they need to sort of operate. Like I mentioned previously, how the Boston Celtics, they've had better chemistry than the rest of the other teams. Well, 3 of the players on the Knicks, they played in college together, and there is no better chemistry than that, playing in college under the same coach, under the same system, all of that. And I really think that they have the best chance of beating the Celtics. But with that, we are out of time for this 3rd segment, so now we are going to go into the 4th segment, because there is a new leader in NCAA total points for basketball. And I'm sure you guys know exactly who that is, but I will be right back to talk about it after this short break. And we are back with the 4th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And today, in this 4th segment, we are going to be talking about the NCAA and how there is now a new leader in total points in NCAA basketball, and that is Caitlin Clark. And I'm sure you guys know exactly who Caitlin Clark is. She's taken the media and the NCAA women's basketball by storm this past year, as well as last year when she made it to the NCAA finals, making it through the March Madness tournament for women's basketball. And recently, Caitlin Clark beat the Iowa Buckeye. Jesus Christ. Caitlin Clark, part of the Iowa team, played against the Ohio Buckeyes women's team, and they were the second ranked team in the NCAA for the women's team, and Iowa recently beat them. So with this in mind, she ended the game with 35 points as well, and she passed Pistol Pete in terms of total points in NCAA. In my personal opinion, she is the greatest college athlete the NCAA has ever seen. And it's honestly, like, it is amazing how I would have never expected anyone, let alone, like, I don't want to be like rude or like derogatory in any sort of way. I would have never expected like a female basketball player to even get close to breaking a record like that, and she was able to do it. And it really, like, it's so inspirational for a lot of like these women players who like going into college and like they're going to go into the WNBA, like I'm not going to get paid as much, and it's like I'm not going to be as good or not going to be considered as good as a lot of these other players. But Caitlin right now, like a lot of teams and a lot of people around the media, they're like making jokes saying like the Pistons should sign her, or like the Wizards should sign her because the Wizards need her. And that is incredible, the fact that like they're talking about this like and she's a woman, because the media it's not kind to women basketball players. They are not kind to the WNBA whatsoever, and they are not kind to women's college basketball whatsoever. So the fact that Caitlin Clark is getting this type of recognition, yes, Nerf Boy questions me. Yes, I do read the chat. I don't know why you're questioning me on that. I'd see your comments in the chat, but my bad if I didn't see any of the comments. I responded to the previous comments before. I apologize for that. But regardless, going on into like Caitlin Clark and her prowess in the NCAA, she beat Pistol Pete in the record. Now Pistol Pete, he did this without a 3-point line, and a lot of people around the media, they sort of give a lot more credit to Pistol Pete breaking that holding that scoring record because there was no 3-point line. And it was like, if he had a 3-point line, he would have ended with a lot more points than he did. And the fact that he did it, that he played in college for 3 years as opposed to Caitlin playing for 4 years. And with that in mind, I really think that's unfair for Caitlin, like, and for women's basketball. Like, I understand that, like, he didn't play with the 3-point line and he only played 3 years, and that is phenomenal. That is amazing for a player to do all of that and to maintain that scoring title up until this point, in an era where there was no 3-point line. But it really seems like whenever people bring this up, it really seems like they're trying to discredit what Caitlin is doing, and I really just don't agree with that, because not only actually, hold on, just a question, because there is a question in the chat. Nerf Boy 712 said, "Do you think that the Lakers should give the ball more to LeBron?" Honestly, that's an interesting question. I mean, they give the ball to LeBron a lot. I mean, he runs the offense in like 9 out of 10 times if it's not D'Lo that holds the ball. And asking LeBron, like, at this age to hold the ball, like, more, I think it's a really difficult task. I mean, granted, like, he's shown us that, like, age is just a number to him, and, like, he can run the offense, but is it a good idea for him to do that? I don't really think it's a good idea for LeBron to do that, because, like, the risk of him being injured. I remember in the beginning of the season, like, they were talking about how he was supposed to get, like, he was supposed to be on minutes restrictions, and they were going to sort of, like, alleviate the pressure, but that really hasn't happened at all this season, and it's just another year for LeBron where he's had to just carry the load on the offensive side of the ball. And I really think that they should just they should give the ball, like, obviously, like, it's working, give the ball to LeBron more, but at the same time, like, D'Lo, he's been producing pretty well ever since the trade deadline, so maybe let D'Lo, like, allow D'Lo to operate and, like, alleviate the pressure from LeBron James and operating with the basketball. But, like, at the same time, it's LeBron James with the basketball, and you want LeBron in the basketball. I think come the playoffs, they have to do that, and, like, that's, if they want to win, they have to rely on LeBron. But I don't think that's really the best idea, because, like, again, he's old, he could get injured, and all of these other players, like, they need to get into that rhythm of being able to create some sort of offense if LeBron doesn't create that offense. And Nerf Boy 712, he also has more questions in the chat, so I might as well go ahead and answer that in this fourth segment. Why not? Who do I think is the best contender for the Western Conference Finals? He says the Clippers, and I have to agree with him on that. Like, the Clippers, they definitely do have the best chance of making it all the way to the Western Conference Finals and winning it in the end. However, this is the biggest but that you'll ever see. They are the Clippers. And we all know, like, the history that the Clippers have in the postseason. They constantly blow series and they blow leads when they should be winning these games. And I really feel like that sort of, like, that thing is going to haunt them. And that persona is going to haunt them going into the playoffs. So with that in mind, I think Denver has a better chance of making it to the Western Conference Finals and winning the Western Conference Finals. And they also have they also have better matchups if they were to go up against the Clippers. I mean, Jokic, like, I don't really think the Clippers have anyone that could stop Jokic consistently. Granted, Zubac has been his best games have been against Jokic. I totally understand that. But come playoff time, I think Jokic is going to just completely flip gears and turn on the switch and just play as dominantly as he's always played in the postseason. And the same thing applies with Jamal Murray, who's also a triple-double machine in the postseason. If you remember from last year when they were in the finals, they became the first duo to get a triple-double together, and I really think that they have the best chance of making it out of the West, given the fact that they already have experience getting out of the West, and they haven't really, like, blown the leads that the Clippers have blown through history. But that's my personal opinion. But other than that, I do think that the Clippers could make it to the Western Conference Finals, and assuming they don't choke towards the end of the day. But that's my personal take on it. And going back to what I was talking about with the NCAA and Caitlin Clark with Pistol Pete, I see your comment, Nerf Boy, and I'm going to touch on that in a few seconds, but I do want to continue with this segment. Pistol Pete, he did hold the scoring record, but he had to take 40 shots to do it. And Caitlin has only taken, like, 22 shot attempts to do it. And, like, yes, she did have a three-point line. But saying that Pete's is more impressive, it's like you're downgrading Caitlin's style of play and like what she brings to the game. Because we're seeing this with our own eyes. And a lot of people that are saying this haven't seen Pistol Pete play with their own eyes. And I really think it's unfair. So now I'm going to acknowledge Nerf Boy's comments. Will the Heat do it again this season? And what I think he means by do it again is, will the Heat surprise everybody and make a huge run in the playoffs? And there's no like real, I can't say for certain if they're going to do it again, because that's all dependent on how well Jimmy Butler plays in the postseason. And if we're going to go, like, I'm a little bit superstitious. If we're going to go by the pattern that it's followed for, like, the last few years, Miami, they beat the Bucks, then the Bucks beat Miami. Now Miami beat the Bucks, and now it's time for the Bucks to beat Miami. So I don't think that Miami is really going to make it as far into the postseason as they have in previous years, especially given with how dominant the Celtics are. And one thing that I do remember is that the Celtics, they came really close to coming back from a 3-0 lead against the Miami Heat. And part of that was because that Jimmy Butler wasn't playing like playoff Jimmy Butler. I personally think playoff Jimmy Butler's a myth, and he only exists in really the first round. Like, if you look at his numbers going deeper into the playoffs last year, they got worse and worse and worse every single time. But still, the media was like, oh, playoff Jimmy, and all that stuff. And I really don't agree with that. So I think this year, like, they aren't going to really make it that far in the postseason. I think if they match up against the Knicks with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, the Knicks have a great chance of beating them. If they match up against the Cavs, the Cavs also have a good chance of taking them to 7 games. But I don't really think it's the year for the Miami Heat to do it, especially given with how dominant the Boston Celtics have been and how they take these games, like, really personally. I wouldn't be surprised if they match up against the Heat, they take that series very, very personally and they end up sweeping them. Would not be surprised if that happens whatsoever. And again, it's all down to whether or not Jimmy Butler can play like playoff Jimmy Butler, because that's sort of like, when he plays well, the rest of the team seems to play well. And that's the driving force that the Miami Heat have. And that was something that they were missing in the postseason and in the finals going up against Denver. So I don't really think that the Heat have what it takes this season to do what they've done in previous seasons. That's just me, though, especially given how like powerful like the Celtics and the Knicks are in the Eastern Conference. That's just me. But going back to the NCAA leader in points, it's sort of like it's negating like all of Caitlin Clark's accomplishments, because we've seen it with our own two eyes and we see what she's doing, and she's probably the chosen one to bring the WNBA fame. That's how I view her. I really see her as the chosen one to bring that the viewership that the WNBA needs. Similar to how Michael Jordan brought all the viewership that the NBA needed at a time when the NBA wasn't that popular in the 80s, like before Michael Jordan like was what was known as the player as he was when his time with Team USA 1992, the Dream Team, all that kind of stuff. And it brought attention to the NBA on a global scale. And similar to how MJ can bring attention to the NBA, I think Caitlin will bring attention to the WNBA, because a lot of people, they want to tune in and watch her play. She played a game in a football stadium because Iowa couldn't fit all of the fans that wanted to be in attendance for the game. That's how many viewers she brings. And last year in the NCAA Women's Finals, that was the most viewed NCAA Women's Finals in history. And it completely destroyed the viewership compared to the 2020 and 2021 NBA Finals. So with that in mind, she's an attention grabber. And I feel like the WNBA should capitalize on this with marketing and advertisements and all sorts of things just to promote her so that people could watch her play. I have no doubt she is going to sell out crowds in every single arena that she goes to, because she's Caitlin Clark. And like that's just who she is. That is the player that she is. And I think she has the nickname Ponytail Pete. Somebody called her that, and I thought it was relatively funny. But she is going to be the face of the WNBA for a very long time, and that is going to bring a lot more players that are going to want to be competitive in the WNBA. And that is my personal opinion on Caitlin Clark. But with that, we are out of time for this segment, and that is the end of the show. That is the end of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as always, as I do in the first two segments of every show, I remind everybody, as always, to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized and to donate to the show, because it definitely does help. The link is in the description as well as displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. The link is GSMCPodcast.net. And it really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys, the viewers. And with that out of the way, that is the end of the segment. Thank you once again for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.